Why don't we'll start with self-introductions. So I'm Brian, VP of Product at Intercom. We also build Fin. That's confusing. I'll talk about that later. Hanno?
We don't have that confusion. We still have one brand and one product, founder and CEO at Personio. We're HR and payroll platform for small and mid-sized companies, branded as the intelligent HR platform, essentially solving the same customer needs with AI, but in a more powerful way, and also something we'll talk about in a moment, I'm sure.
And we also only have one name, but we did change name. So earlier this year, we got sued for our last name, Leia, and we had to change. And ChatGPT came up with a great name, Legora. It's actually true. We supercharge lawyers with AI, and we started back in 2023, and since then we've grown from just shy of 3 engineers in Stockholm to north of 220 people globally across 6 offices. So we've been busy the last 2 years.
So just to make clear, you've got like 2 dynamics here. Personio ourselves have been around for a decade and then had to adjust 3 years ago, and brand new company born out of the LLM era. So we'll see what we can extract there. That's kind of interesting, different perspectives there. So I want to start by looking back. I don't know, presumably everyone in this conference is like, oh my God, we're nearly on this milestone. We're like a week away from ChatGPT launching, which was 3 years ago. And it's rare that you have a singular event that clearly ushers in a new era, but it's like a clear singular event of that date was. So I thought it would be interesting is just look back to that period 3 years ago before your company was founded and where ours were around for quite a while there. Frame how you adopted, how you adapted. What were the toughest decisions back then? And what do you think were the most important ones at that period?
I think on that moment, that changing moment, but also then the weeks following, I think the harder thing was, to an extent that probably still is true to today, is it was clear very quickly that it's going to be a paradigm shift, and it was also clear very quickly that a lot of things don't work yet. I mean, especially 3 years ago, lots of hallucinations, but still today figuring out where the boundaries are, what actually can be done, and where do you need to go all in, and where are areas where you probably better off waiting a little bit until some of the models have shaken out, some of the systems, like what are the tools? I mean, 3 years ago, you could have said, oh, I need to automate my customer service and now build this in-house, or you could have waited a while until the guys from Fin and others have figured that out. And I think that's a little bit been and still is today a challenge. Where are the things where you really proprietarily use stuff, not just for your own product, but also for your internal use cases, and then trying to do stuff yourself versus where do you give the market a little bit of time, the technology to shake out and figure that out. And I think that's has been always is a big tension for us, especially given we're of course not, this is the only thing we're doing, but there's a lot of things, if I talk to our customers today, that their needs cannot necessarily, a lot of the needs that they have cannot necessarily be met by AI, at least not today. And so we still need to invest a lot of our efforts into the old world, and I think that tension was difficult 3 years ago, and to an extent still holds true today.
I mean, I think I share a lot of that experience since we started building, and I don't think I've talked about this publicly, but the sort of seed that became Legora was started back in 2020, and we were working with the very early versions of BERT, and it was a model from Google, and the sort of Swedish fine-tuned version of them. And we also remember working with the very early GPT models, like not pre-GPT-3. And they were incredibly hard to work with, and they were also very racist. So it just made it very difficult to solve, legal tasks. I actually remember when ChatGPT sort of went live. I was doing a sabbatical in the US. So I studied in Sweden, but I was on a sabbatical in Illinois. And I thought, I'd done a lot of computer science, I'd done a lot of business, but in Illinois, you can take a lot more fun studies. So I was doing ballet, salsa, public speaking, and poetry. And ChatGPT wasn't very useful for the ballet or salsa, but it was really good at writing speeches. So I started using it to write all my exams for the sort of public speaking class. And when we then came back to Sweden and we said, okay, let's found a company around this, the premise was, holy shit, we can take all this work that we previously had to spend weeks on, just put that in a prompt and it works. And yeah, maybe it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to sort of show that there's capability here. And then in the very beginning, and at least back in 2023, there was a lot of talk around fine-tuning, and the model was like the big asset. And we didn't have enough money to fine-tune models. So we sort of said, well, the model layer is the fastest depreciating asset in history, so let's just build the best application layer on top of it. And I think what we had to learn as engineers coming into the legal world was the model doesn't matter, we just need to figure out how people want to work with it. So it was more about talking to users, learning about the problems, building applications that have nice user interfaces and that people actually want to use. And I think that then sort of put us on a trajectory where, yes, then you can start to do really sophisticated things with the models and you start to elaborate on new use cases, things like that.
A big question, maybe we'll come back to that later, which is like, where do you think the value is going to sit in a few years, application layer versus the model layer? Just like thinking back to Intercom and our biggest decisions, we just optimized immediately for speed. And that was our primary operating principle was we want to be fastest here. And we shipped the small stuff for like teammate, you know, the inbox composer stuff. It's funny, like that was January after ChatGPT launch and Apple's still getting that stuff in there. But anyway, everyone shipped that stuff fast. And then we're like, engineer said, oh, I think I can control hallucinations, which was basically a RAG system before it was called a RAG system. We're like, all right, swing big. So it was speed and size of the swing. And I think speed has always been a top priority for us, and we've just continually swung bigger, feeling like basically the prize there is to do the work, not to help with the work, but to do the work. Although help with the work doesn't go away. But so that was a big one, is when to swing big. And I think a couple other interesting ones for us were like that, to help with the work, which is Copilot. And we're like, which one? Should we try to do the work for the end user or help the teammate do it? And then we swung back and said, we got to go big into Copilot. And I think a lot of us would go back and say, shit, I wish we could have had that time and sped up where we were going with, when I say do the work, the end user version of it. So it's like, where is the value? Is it helping humans, or is it just trying to actually do the work for humans? That's still a tension we feel there. And then speaking, one of our biggest decisions was, as a company, saying, hey, you don't need to use our help desk to use Fin. So what we call standalone Fin, a big strategic decision for us to like say we want to win with Fin. And then we got into like Fin.ai and who do I work for, as I mentioned there, the whole branding, but trying to like be unencumbered by our incumbent standing, which we were uncomfortable with. So those were like big decisions going back, at least when I think back towards it. But it's basically speed and size of the swing, which for us has just continually been bigger and bigger there. Okay, well, let's talk about now. So 3 years later, what's changed? Is it still chaos and uncertainty everywhere? Are things stabilizing? What's changed 3 years later?
So I think, first of all, a lot more like differentiating between the internal use and the in-product use. I think internally as a company, I think it's obviously for all of us here in the audience, but also everyone at Personio become much more second nature. I think like there's no team that's not using AI in some shape or form, and yet there's still a disparity of inside the company of some teams that have really figured out to transform their work, and others that just kind of I'll summarize some stuff here and do some stuff. So I think that's a big thing, but it's obviously become very much like from the beginning like, oh, what do we do with this? Like everyone sort of has figured out what AI can do, what it's good at, what its core use cases are. I think when it comes to the product, what I mentioned a little bit before, what I've tried to, like, there was a moment where then a lot of teams just try to figure out, oh, what can we build with AI? And then, of course, there were a bunch of things we added to our product that are AI features. But I've really tried to pull back the team on, let's not just build AI into Personio to build AI into Personio, but let's think back, what are the problems our customers use and have, and what can now be solved differentially with AI, and where can we have a bigger impact to our customers with AI? And I think there's a lot of really exciting things when it comes to also thinking about Personio, think about a parental leave. A lot of you might have never thought about how that process works on the back end, but we've always had that process in Personio as someone submits a parental leave request, and then for the end user you get it approved, and it shows up in your system. But the HR team does to do a lot of stuff outside the system. So all of a sudden we can think about a much more agentic flow where we go into all kinds of governmental system and all kinds of other administrative work that happens behind it. So I think And that's the really exciting thing where I think AI for us brings a lot of value, where it solves an existing customer need in a more powerful way, rather than I didn't really have a need to have my recruiting pipeline that I can see in a graph also summarized in a text, because AI can describe what's in the graph. So I think that's the thing that's sort of changed, that we're now really understood where can AI have real customer value and solve a existing problem for the customer, rather than just AI can do some cool things, let's blend it across so we kind of can call ourselves intelligent and smart and all these buzzwords. And I think that's I think what's changed a little bit. And also and from customers, I think that's a little bit lagging. Some customers still just want to hear that you do something with AI, but more and more they realize, like, yeah, I want to really understand where you really understanding my needs and solving them with AI, or are you just sprinting AI across and try to look cool?
So can we just do a quick raise of hands? Like, how many in here were building with AI back in 2023? Yes, it's like half the room. And how many are building with AI today? Right, a lot more. Back when we started, the entire ecosystem and all the frameworks around making AI useful and sort of, easily accessible to build fast and good products didn't exist. Like, I remember LangChain and sort of just came out, and it was really hard to work with for any production quality software. And so we ended up writing our own like agentic framework, which again is like a shit idea if you're a legal tech. Like, why should you develop your own agentic framework? Like, you shouldn't. You should use something off the shelves. But there wasn't anything. And so almost every quarter or every 6 months, I almost feel ourselves sort of, oh, great, like there's a new ecosystem player, let's leverage that so that we don't have to do it. Oh, there's a new great OCR engine, let's use that. Oh, there's a great new chunking algorithm, let's use that. It's kind of all the boring stuff. Like, if you think about an AI application like Legora, it's like this iceberg. Yes, you see the like pretty chat or the pretty sort of UI in the top, but then there's this, underwater mountain of things to optimize so that the system works sort of at a production grade. That, I think, is the biggest change if I look now versus 3 years ago. It's actually not the model quality, but the maturity of the framework around it that makes it so much easier to build.
Interesting. I think, like, for me, thinking back of the utter chaos and everything feeling existentially wide open, still feels mostly true, but there does feel like some stability, like the shape of a customer service agent. I'm like, we keep saying, when will we actually have shipped our V1? And it's always like, we're just 3 months away from like feeling like we've got the shape of what that product is. And so I'm like, I say that today, but I'll change my mind. But it feels like that V1 shape, at least, of an AI customer service agent. And even looking where competitors are, I'm like, that feels like somewhat stable. We understand that space. But I just think of like the huge market uncertainty. And there are players stabilizing. You mentioned your space. It's like, it feels like there's 2 now going for it there.
I don't know who the other one is.
Right, yeah, hard to say. But I still feel the strategic uncertainty is still wide open. So for us, it's the space of like how, and customers talk to you about, hey, I want you to work with our agents or other agents. And they have no idea what that means. And they're like, but I need that. I need to know you have that, but I don't really know what I actually want for your agent to work with my agent. And then it's like, where are these agents going to be? Where is the space going to be? And even like MCP, which is one of those things that's taken off legitimately, and I think we still have not figured out the implications of that. Here's like one example of like wide open strategy is almost everyone has some version of AI insights for what they're building, right? It's just like clear opportunity that you can bring. Whatever your product is, you've got some AI insights. And it's like, if you put your data in an MCP server, how much of that can just be done in ChatGPT or Claude? And how much are you building product that you'll basically throw away because just get your data there and some other tool will actually be the tool that people go and do that. Or that's where they can build their own tools to do this. So I think so much of the product space, I feel like the customer agent space, I feel like there's a boundary I could draw with confidence, but you go out there and it's still wide fucking open in so many places. And I still feel the winners broadly is a wide open question. Like, it still feels it's all to play for.
I totally agree. I mean, I think we've done 0 to 1 on both on the company journey, but frankly on the product journey. There's so much left to build, and you almost need like a year and a half, 2 years to just build the foundational stuff. Yeah. And we get the same thing, like law firms coming to us saying, "Hey, we want agents," and we go like, "What do you mean?" Yeah. Like, no, but we want tools. And, you know, well, okay, like, is this what you mean, or is this what you mean, right? Like, there's also a huge customer education that's happening, and it's happening faster and faster because of some of the reasons you mentioned. We're working with AI both in our personal lives, but also in the different functions. So, yeah, I feel like we're very early.
And I think to the point that it's still very unclear who the winner's going to be. I think there's also it's very clear that these big hyperscaler model companies will not solve all the problems that we are on stage solving or other problems. It's just, and that's the same, I think, where like back in when pre-AI, a lot of companies or a lot of people were always scared, oh, what if Amazon or Google or whatever kills me? Like, the reality is they never killed every single vertical in the industry because that's not possible for them. That's why they build things like GCP and AWS to build on top. But I think that with AI, it's also unclear yet where the boundaries of these model companies will be, because it's very clear that they won't and they can't just purely one from a building the right interface for a lawyer looks very different than something for a person building an app and so on. And then also because you need still to have a localized go-to-market. You need to speak to these people, even if in theory a ChatGPT could do what you, me, and you are doing, they would still not be able to reach all these people in the right teams. That being said, I think what's unclear is where the boundaries will exactly be to then figure out which are categories is lovable, a standalone thing still in 10 years, or will Cursor be disrupted and just go to zero? Who knows? I think that's where it's interesting. Not even just from the new people, new kids on the block, who's going to win, but also who is even has a right to play in 5 years. And I think that's going to be really interesting, but really hard to figure out today.
Yeah, we're still in a place where it's very plausible that like diametrically opposed conclusions are all on the table. You know, it's rare that you're in a space where it's that wide open to that point of, oh, this could be a $10 billion company or zero, and maybe in the space of 18 months. You know, so there's still that level of existential uncertainty. Let me pull back to a slightly different angle here. What are like the dirty secrets from your perspective? Dirty secrets being like, what's the stuff that you think you understand pretty well about the state of the technology, the state of the market, but it doesn't feel like it's broadly understood by your customers or by builders out there?
Okay, maybe I'll start. I'll sort of do it from the customer perspective. I unfortunately feel like a lot of the end users are still in the sort of, you know, AI equals, or like Gen AI equals like Google, or like AI equals knowledge. And we've just always thought about it as kind of this reasoning engine, or, you know, a recipe follower. And you need to provide the recipes and you need to provide the tools and the ingredients for it to work. That mindset, I think, is just not existent with our clients. They sort of go there and they expect it to be this all-knowing thing instead of like a tool that they need to learn how to use and then use it effectively. And I think that's sort of most apparent with maybe law firm partners, because they open up the system and then they go, write me a share purchase agreement. That's the prompt. And they expect like a 400-page output with perfectly written legalese, and it's just not there yet. And then they use it to Google things, which, yes, works really well if you turn on the web search, but maybe it doesn't work so well unless you turn on the web search. So I just feel like there's a misunderstanding of what the LLMs should really be used for, and sort of how to compartment, like in which compartment to put them in your mind.
Yeah, do you want to follow up on this?
Well, my example was actually, if I can actually, because that for me, the dirty secret is like, everyone out there is demos. Hey, you can automate these processes like for customer service. Hey, issue a refund. Everyone's like, hey, look at all that you can put in your data and go here and get to the successful conclusion. And yes, you can, and you can whip up a demo super fast. But to actually make it production ready, customer ready, is a huge difference. And the delta between that is like human work is still required. It is still hard to successfully automate these processes, and humans generally have no idea. This is what's surprising to your point, because that's exactly where we have it. They're like, oh yeah, we kind of know our refund process. We've sort of written it down. Well, not really. You kind of just ask Tommy over there or go over here, and there's so much that's still in our heads. And because LLMs are black boxes, people don't know how they know what they know, so they don't know what they can't know, right? And so it's like, no, you got to get what's in your head down on paper. Or actually, you guys need to figure out what the hell your policy is or your approach here. So a big part of automating work with AI is first figuring out, hey, what is your actual, there's like human consulting here required you got to write it down. So I think part one is like, people don't actually know their own internal processes. They want to magically automate. And AI needs your process to automate. The technology cannot figure it out implicitly if you just throw all your conversation data at it. And then I think the second part that's not broadly understood is like the process for automating these, and there's a bunch of UI of how you get determinism and generative in, but I'll park that of just like, if you've got basically prompt engineering and you're writing out, here's the process that I want to automate. English is the programming language, and therefore it seems like, well, this is pretty straightforward. I'm pretty good at English. And actually the answer is, no, you're not. You're not good at English because you can speak English well, but you can't write the process down well. And it turns out who's good at doing this? Software engineers, because their whole lives is basically plucking out rules from all these processes, figuring out how to spell them out. So for them, this is pretty easy. And they're just changing from the language they were going to English, but it's what's behind, it's what you're writing out, articulating all of this business logic. That is a discrete skill. And then there's like making it work for an LLM, which is, the vagaries of language and stuff like that can go into it.
So Brian, I'll introduce you to a new role that we have at Legora. It's the legal engineer. And it's lawyers are really good at language. Sometimes not so good at process, but some of them are. And to sort of follow on your dirty secret, I mean, we have 40, 50 lawyers at Legora who work with our customers on driving success. And that literally means going to their M&A department, asking their M&A partners, hey, how do you guys do a deal? And then writing that down, right? And then having Legora sort of follow those instructions. But they don't exist, right? And you sort of come in a little bit with this McKinsey mindset of, oh, let's like do a flow chart. And they're like, oh no, it's more art than science. And you're like, oh, well, you do this like 5 steps. So let's just automate it.
Legal engineers, that is a new role.
Open for applications. Yeah, and I think that is very true that customers often also don't understand their own process. I mean, it's even in pre-AI, like pre-AI relevance, I recently spoke to, in theory, we have customers that onboard go live within 2 weeks, and then they have all the data in there and they're running. But then I recently looked for our mid-market data on the go live days and asked my customer service leader, why are they so long? Well, it's not because it takes long to set up the system, but it's because if you ask them, how does your onboarding process look like? I don't know, well, this person does something and this person, and all of a sudden everyone have a laptop. Okay, how do you expect an agent to then run your onboarding process if you can't even specify it in the system, so you can automate it afterwards? So I think very, very well here. I would take the question in a slightly different angle though, and that's for everyone that is now building AI and things, not just from a what can I solve, but also okay, I can obviously wipe code anything, and that's why it's incredibly fast to solve any problem. The reality though, and for a lot of, especially if you go to B2B applications, is that you need to understand not just this is at core like a headline problem a customer has, but what are all the problems in between. So again, using example from our own world, if you think about absence management, it sounds like, oh, that's very easy. I can just sit down in my room and code that up. And still, after 10 years into building Personio, we still get edge cases and use cases of why absences are really complicated to calculate, and why some customers have different policies, and you have to build different settings. And it doesn't help, like, of course it helps you with vibe coding or using cursor and so on to build that faster, but what you can't accelerate is all that learning that you need from a lot of customers that you need to talk to and ingest and then figure out what is a solution that maybe you build a solution and at some point you realized, oh, now we have this new requirements of use cases that our own architecture, whether it's built by Cursor or by your best engineer, can't support anymore. So we need to rewrite that entire absent engine. And I think that's just something that I think gets a little bit lost when you think about, oh yeah, I can go into Lovable and just say, build me an HRS or legal contract management or whatever a product is, and it will spit out something. And at the first glance, in the first demo, it will look like, oh yeah, cool, and he built that in 2 days. Oh, that's amazing. But then if you compare that with the actual customer requirements, especially as I said, when you sell to enterprises, you pretty quickly realize that there's a lot more that still needs to be done, and that I think, at least so far, you can't kind of extract automatically out of the head of the customer.
So you also run into scale at some point. I mean, we found that it's easy to work with a mid-sized Swedish law firm when they do a deal and they need to review 1,000 agreements, and then you go and work with the biggest law firm in the US, and a litigation deal can be 10 million documents, and they all need to run in parallel. And then you have 50,000 users on the platform using it every day, and then everything has to scale, right? Like you run into a lot of those issues too.
I think going back to the forward deployed lawyer that you guys have, for me, one of the kind of like the dirty secret is, like, for customer service, which I remember someone was talking about, why isn't everything already automated? We're 3 years later, right? Surely everyone should be at 95% automation. And we're not. Like, the vast majority of companies are well beneath that. And so you have, if we look at our own CS team, I think we're like 80% of all inbound. We have some customers maybe at 90%, and that's like the very long tail. Like, the reality of most people are still in the 30, 40, 50% of automating all their inbound. Why is that? It's because it's still a lot of work. The processes to automate take time that you still got to go through. And I think in a way, like for product builders, the stuff that's hard is the value. If it was easy, then they don't need an application to do it. So you kind of like have to go after what's messy, and the human messiness, go after that, because that's where the value of your product is to do a hard thing that's not easy to replicate. But I think customers often don't recognize that they're in for, hey, there's a lot of work ahead of you here. And that expectation of, I can just do this in like 30 seconds, or a half an hour here. It's like, no, there's a lot of work, and it's the most cliche word, the most consultancy word, fucking transformation, right? You don't want to say it out loud, but it's like, fuck, that's what it is. You got to change how your whole team works and thinks, what the people are doing there, and therefore, as product builders, recognize the scale of, if it's real transformation, you're running up against humans who need to change what they're doing, what the role is, and that whole human side to it is easy to forget because it's a lot of work to go from single digits automation to 90%. So the other thing I just want to touch on, that the forward deployed lawyer, what a great phrase, is although I think, are they not going into jail? Is that not a forward deployed lawyer? Helping someone out. Anyway, but I would never have expected this kind of services-led growth. There's been some good articles about it. But I think one unexpected thing is AI products have, well, maybe on the consumer side where it has to be product-led growth, but from like a business side, from a SaaS side, product-led growth has not equaled an AI product. And this is, everyone is doing forward deployed. We have fucking hiring forward deployed product managers. I'm like, really? And it's like, really? Because of all of this, right? Because people need help working through, because of this awful, yucky transformation word, I think is what it is, of requires these people. Any reflections on you guys of this reality? Did you expect that going in? Is that durable?
We did not expect it going in. I think we were naive and said, well, if we build the best product, people will come. So one is distribution. Right? You need a pretty big B2B enterprise sales team to work with law firms. And then two, just as you said, we couldn't just give the firm access to the tool and then have it sort of go viral. I think an analogy that's correct is like when bookkeeping went to Excel from being manual. Like when you go to business school, you take a class in Excel or at least I did. And I think you have to learn Excel to sort of be proficient in it. I think it's exactly the same with AI. And so far, on our balance sheet, like we basically take this like cost of implementing the services because we think it's the only way to make the products sticky, right? I think, my hope is that would disappear someday. But we're quite upfront with the fact that this is going to take time, effort, energy, and money on the opposing side to sort of land successfully. It's not like, you buy the AI tool, you check the box, you're done. That's like starting. And I've never met any client that has overestimated the amount of time and energy it will take, ever.
And I think to your point of this being a transformation, it also, for a lot of these customers, even if you had a forward deployed engineer that helped set them up, or if the product is good enough to set it up itself, you still need that cultural transformation that you want to handhold your customer through, because for them to get value out of that product, I mean, we see a bunch of AI being bought and implemented, but we're also seeing a bunch of people killing stuff again very quickly because they don't get value out of it. And for that, you really need to help them on the transformation, help them how they need to change how they work, and to rethink. And that is really hard because there's humans on the other side. Some of them are just not interested in kind of adopting a new workflow because they've always done it that way. Some are scared that if they're too good at that will take away their own job. So I think there's a lot of psychology at play as well that you need to help the customer, help the people work through. And that's, I think, also one of the reasons why you see so different results from different customers, different people.
Let's switch to the stack. Max, you talked about the stack, the value at the application layer, and the LLM maybe commoditizes and the prices drop dramatically. I was talking to a leader of another SaaS company of like our generation who's adjusted heavily, and they have the exact inverse experience with going at the model layer, which is their experience was they had custom models from the outset for cost optimization stuff, and they had a bunch of them. They had a good team in ahead of it, and they're now looking to get rid of their custom models, and we are the exact inverse. We're like, don't touch the custom stuff. The LLMs are advancing too fast. Anything you do on top of it, the side of it, will be irrelevant. And then about 6 months ago, we're like, okay, that seems to be plateauing. It seems to be post-training is where the value is in here. And so we've started bet at the model layer and building our own models, just as you're saying. They're like, everyone's got a shitload of various touch points of different model calls and different stuff there, and optimizing each one of those. So it's like, wow, we have exact opposite strategies here. Do you guys have a sense of that bet of where that value accrues, and what's the risk of the bottom layer eating the top?
So I actually think that's different in different industries. You guys have, your product and the CS cycle is very mature. Right? They are a lot of the software around the AI has been done, I would assume, right? Like a lot of the UI, a lot of the processes, a lot of the core workflows have been done, maybe in a manual way, so you need to redo them with AI. But sort of the sticking between the parts has been done, and so you're optimizing the AI. We still have so much left to build that's just pure software. I mean, that's not even AI. And you need to build, a way for Legora to integrate with Outlook. You need to build a mobile app. You need to build that. You need to build that. You need to build that. So we're quite far away from over-optimizing the model part of our stack, I would, confess to say. And I think that's fine, because I actually don't think the most value for the customer is in us optimizing the model. It's refreshing in the legal world, an entire stack that was built in the 90s that has been like too unsexy to go and rebuild. But now with AI, there's like a reason, because you can build things in a much futuristic or forward-looking way.
And I would say it's also, I'm not surprised that you have that experience with that other founder where it's like they're going opposite directions than you are. I think it's really differentiated and dependent on what type of company you are and what are the problems that you're solving, and where is your benefit with AI. Is it because you have just a really strong core software and that's your mode, and then you just automate on top with a normal like an off-the-shelf LLM, or is it, well, everyone has that, like in your case, and now it depends on your data, doing post-training, then having a better model, and that gets the incremental value they get from it. or is it that actually the moat comes from where we're a little bit more that we just have a lot of data. We don't necessarily need. We partially need. There might be use cases where we can have your approach, where we post-train something, but there might also be a lot of where just the benefit comes from us having a lot of data from similar companies and us being able to kind of feed that to the customer back, but we can still use one untrained model. So I think it really depends where is your differentiation for the competitor and what's the moat you're looking to build up. And I think that then depends on can you take an off-the-shelf model, and also will you always need the most advanced models, because also, I mean, we haven't now talked at all about cost and gross margins, but ultimately, if a business wants to be around for a long time, you want to have also a sensible gross margin. And I know a lot of AI companies right now don't, which is totally fine. But if you then always needed the most expensive, most newest model, then that eventually becomes a problem as well. So I think that's another consideration of what you need for your use case and how do you ultimately make the business work as well.
And the other dynamic that's obvious to everyone is the model layer companies are moving up the stack to the product layer, which I think also says they're seeing a lot of value that's going on there. So it's still there's still so much to play out here of like where even the boundaries of it, which is another thing that AI does. Des has a phrase on this of AI just kills all product boundaries and lines and roles and your mental model of the world. But let me change gears here to like. What's the problem you guys are focused on next? What are you obsessing about now for the next 6 months?
So we started this year, we were 40 people. We're now over 200. So the company has grown a lot, both in sort of organizationally, but also in our customer base and sort of the breadth of service that we offer. Next year, we're going to probably triple that. So I'm very focused on just maintaining the culture, maintaining velocity, building an organization where, I mean, you kind of want to make yourself redundant. That's where 70% of my mind is right now. On the product side, like the thing that I'm most excited about is we did a launch 2 weeks ago where law firms have this problem where they work under the billable hour. And turns out AI makes them a lot faster. A lot faster, right? Like in some of the pilots that we run, you get findings like, okay, in this real estate due diligence, it used to take us 12 hours. We now did it in 25 minutes. Like that's a problem. And speaking about the cultural, implications of if an associate or senior associates figure out how to do that, and the partner goes, "Oh, man, like you can't use that. Like we still got to build the 12 hours." Yeah. There's a problem. So we really want to help the law firms transition this business model or transition their way of doing business. So we released something called the Legora portal, which is effectively a white-labeled version of the law firm, where if they build a core workflow, they can publish that to their clients. So they can become a software company, and they can productize their own knowledge and expertise and get a vessel to sort of deploy that to their clients. And sort of arriving at that conclusion was really interesting because we got a lot of inbound from big corporations. And we got a lot of referrals from law firms with clients going to the law firms asking them, "Hey, we see that you guys did a press release about AI. We also want to be part of it." And they go, "Oh yeah, go talk to Legora." But now they can say, "Oh, that's great. Like we actually have our own AI portal and you can work with it and you get access to it." And I think that's really interesting because it sort of flips the game a little bit. And I'm of the opinion, you talked about AI doing end-to-end tasks. Like if AI can do a task, it will do that task. The only question is kind of where does it get transacted? Like where does it get completed? And in this way, law firms will still have an opportunity to monetize and scale that value that they can bring.
Yeah, I think for us, when it comes to the product roadmap, recently we talked about AI strategy and we had a little bit of a session on like where do we believe we can deliver most value. And then mid-session, I sort of pulled out our seed pitch deck from 2015 or early 2016, and I said, like, these are exactly the same value pillars, and that's, I think, a good thing. And the reason is that, like, a customer from HR software wants to automate as much of the approval process. They want to customize the product as much as they can to their needs in their organization, and they want to get insights on and reporting on their people. And across all three of these dimensions, we can obviously, based on what we've built so far, upscale that value to customers, and we can automate a lot more with agents across workflows that already happen through Personio, but can now be expanded and a length. We can customize the product in a completely different way based on using AI. And lastly, we obviously automation, reporting, and analytics can be taken to a much more proactive level where you continuously screen all the data and then provide them insights proactively. And I think that's really interesting to again, not say AI is this new thing and here's our old business with our own value proposition, but it should be one thing, at least in our case, that is the value we bring to customers. And across these dimensions, we're just up-leveling the amount of value we provide.
It's trying to figure out what are the things that don't change. So much does change, but there are things that don't change there. I think for us, one of the things that where we're focused on is that's caused like huge internal debate and discomfort is we feel like in the last couple of years when Owen came back as CEO 3-4 years ago, he's like, we got to focus, we got to pick a lane, it's customer service. And that was huge upside to the company of really having that singular focus rather than a broader communications platform that that was like sales, marketing, and support that we had done before. And we got huge market company, everyone took value from that and really worked well. And we're like, to AI, it knocks down the boundaries, and we're like, there's not just going to be a service agent. It's like, what do you think? It's going to be a customer agent. It's going to need to do sales shit. It's going to need to do success stuff in there. The boundary that you want to draw here will not exist in the boundary that's there. So we're like, we have to deliver this customer agent and go back to being more horizontal, where we have like scar tissue from that lack of what's feels like a lack of focus, and we're like going back to, no, we have to do it. The technology demands it, and customers are demanding it. So that for us is where we're trying to figure out is like we feel like we're forced to go horizontal for what the product will inevitably become.
It's the same for us. I mean, if you look in a law firm, you've got litigation teams, you've got corporate and commercial teams, you've got real estate teams, IP, and they work slightly different. Like they do different work, but we need to build for all of them because we land very sort of full service in this firm. And I don't believe that there will be sort of 20 different point solutions, but rather sort of one, and then that can tap into additional capabilities if needed.
And this breadth is hard. Go to market is hard with breadth, with different sellers, different buyers. So there's so many knock-on implications of it. But well, 3 minutes. There's one topic I forgot to bring up that we brought up in the chat, which is where are the bounds? Before we go to Q&A, where are the boundaries you see in AI?
I mean, I think it very much depends on the area we're in and also where development are today. I do think you just mentioned one before that's very interesting. That is just what can, like, both by what's documented already, but also what can be automated right now so far, and maybe that gets different in a few years, but when you said, like, yeah, on average your customers are maybe automating 30-40% or not 90%, and I think that's also true when you like, of course everyone gets giddy by the headlines and the news, and then an earnings call of this company which has automated all of our customer service now, and we're now letting go 300 people or whatever, and then sometimes you happen to know that CEO, and then you reach out to them, and then, oh, can you please put me in touch with your customer service team or whatever team where that massive saving has come from, and you dig in, like, yeah, that's that we shared there is sort of true, but only if we look at it in that angle and we exclude this kind of stuff and so on. And so I think the reality is both things are true at the same time. There's a massive efficiency gains, a massive value generation that's happening from AI. And there's a lot of limitations and a lot of even the most interesting use cases like customer service, where just the reality is you can't solve all of these things. And looking at our own customer service, if a lot of stuff we're using Fin, and a lot of the stuff we can automate based on past answers and based on our knowledge base and so on. But a lot of things we need an agent to kind of look into the customer. Is there a bug, or is there a problem, or are they not just describing it the right way? So there's so much nuance to it that I think is just limited by AI today. And some of that will get better, and some will always remain messy, I think.
I think for us, the main boundary that we're running into is context, not context window necessarily, but sort of how to provide the AI with enough context to make the right decisions and to produce the end result that at the end of the day the user wants. Because ideally, let's say you're working on an M&A deal, like there's so much context around that deal that the AI should have in order to make the correct decisions. It needs to know about the two companies. It needs to know about those two companies' operations. It needs to know about their sort of competitiveness in the market if it's going to help negotiate and write a share purchase agreement. It's going to need to know context from all the meetings you've had. It's going to need to know context from all your emails that you've had with this client. Maybe you've done another deal against the same opposing law firm, so you know how they're going to negotiate. I think the main boundary here again is kind of like, how do we consolidate and sort of bring all of this context to the AI in a shape that allows it to use it to be as smart as a human can be. And it's like, you know, even if you're negotiating and somebody flinches a little bit, you're like, oh, that's like context for me now. But that doesn't feed into the AI. And we need to figure out a way to bring more context to the AI.
And it's so hard to know what's a boundary today that tomorrow will go away, like something like that, versus ones we can solve today but haven't, and versus ones that might be solvable in the future that aren't yet. So it's so risky to draw any boundaries of where it goes. Okay, look at that, right on time. We'll go over to Q&A. Over to you. I think we've got microphones running around the room here.
So thanks for the keynote. First question mainly to Max, but obviously not just specifically. Most of us, and you also work with enterprises, which is quite relevant to go through the pilot stages, which mainly, like I think 99% of really pilot stages. So my question is, what are you really doing like initially and now in terms of pilots? Are you like doing that paid pilots at the moment, or and how much you charging if paid? And did you initially do paid pilots, or did you do free pilots? And also, the second question is like, what are you actually doing to make this pilot successful? What's like the time frame for this? So just like everything about make the actually pilot successful would be very valuable.
Okay, so I'll give like 2 points on this. The first point is, if you have design partners and they're not paying, that doesn't really count. Like that's not super valuable. And if you go talk to VCs, like that shit doesn't matter at all. I made that mistake in the early days. On pilots, we've always had to run pilots, but we also kind of pushed it because it was harder, at least in the beginning. People didn't know what they could do with AI. They didn't know what to expect. And so you couldn't just show a demo and they'd be like, oh, I immediately get it. Let me buy it from you and implement it. You had to run the pilot, show up, onboard everybody, show them individual use cases for each practice area and sort of drive them to success. And then they would go, oh my God, this pilot was amazing. We want to buy the software. And also we want to sort of, expand the deal, right? Most of our pilots are also competitive, which means that they're piloting multiple service providers. And it gives us an opportunity to differentiate. So we show up, well read up on the client, well read up on their use cases, well prepared, and we use it as an opportunity to outshine our competition.
But it's still free, right? So you don't...
Most pilots are free, but that's a dynamic in our market and for our product, and I think it's different. Like I know some companies who are going in and they're indexing a large portion of the data of the customer, right? And so that's a like on-prem implementation. And if you're doing that, of course you would charge for the pilot. So it's very contextual.
Time frame, just again, like on average. So...
Maybe like 2-3 weeks.
I think the norms haven't been set here, and there are. I remember talking to some other vendors who always used to do paid pilots, and they're like, "What the fuck is this? Everything." Wait, and all of a sudden they're expecting free. So they're like, some companies who were in that space, and for us, we're in the same space where it's like frequently head-to-heads going. We actually encourage it. It's like don't, because people aren't used to, most buyers aren't yet used to like do a POC and actually test this live with your customers, because you can't do your normal way of assessing software is not good enough. It's actually not the promise or what it looks like or what they say they have. It doesn't fucking do the job that it said it was going to do, and you can only test that when you have not even your team doing it. You got, in our case. So like for us, we are like trying to encourage that because that's where our product capabilities can shine through. But then the realities of it are, you got to be sure they're successful setting that up. You got to be sure your definitions are the same. Wait, how are they defining success over there? And there's like all these details to get the POC right that matter. But I think I don't know if we've charged yet. I think we're starting to do that. So we're figuring that out, the charging part. And similarly, it's that same time frame. It feels like 2 to 4 weeks, but sometimes there can be a ramp up before it happens. So sometimes it can be a couple months because there's just a process to get to where they're ready to say, okay, we're putting it in to do it there.
Hi, everybody. I'm here. My name is Elena. Thank you so much for this incredible panel, very insightful. I also run a HR tech company, and I would like to ask a question to Hanno, because Personio operates with a lot of people data right now, and everybody talks about AI. It's already here. And but what is the most emerging people trend you see among of your clients that are like worrying about aside AI?
So I do think customers, I think like it depends on the type of problem you're solving. I think a big trend we are seeing is that there's more and more that consolidation into one platform, because of the reason that you can collect all the data in one place, that you can use a lot more exciting things, and you can build more end-to-end workflows. So when we started, everyone was used to like, oh, I buy recruiting here, and then I buy my HR here, then payroll here, and I think that's become more and more consolidated and more together. So I think with AI or without, it's become harder and harder to build a point solution that solves just a very specific AI HR need, because even without AI, people want is to sit one or core, and I think that's continued to, that sort of bundling of software has helped us a lot in the last 10 years as we continue to expand, but it's also just become much more of a demand in the market. And then I think that then allows you to figure out where these use cases, where AI can then oftentimes also, like sometimes solve very local areas, like can I automate my sourcing for candidates? Yes, AI can do that, but oftentimes it's also some of the more horizontal use cases, like the workflows that don't just sit in one HR domain and potentially even go beyond HR. And we talk about it as people workflow automation. So those are things which might initiate of a person joining the company, but it involves IT, involves finance, involves HR, and automating these processes across, which then again also needs a pretty holistic HR platform, and then the ability to integrate with other solutions outside.
Thank you so much.
Can I just take that question one direction to the side? That would be interesting to hear also, Max, from your perspective, which is the people impact of the indirect impact or direct impact of AI, I think has also not gone as expected. Most of our customers are not letting go of service. Some are, but most aren't. And most have just stopped hiring more people and then moving people in those roles to different roles, as in doing more success, or we can now do things with our humans that they never could do before because we didn't have time to do it before. So I think that's also the unexpected change of everyone just thinks AI is replacing human work, therefore those humans no longer are doing anything. And in fact, there's just new and different things that those humans are doing. So that's been one that's sort of a related trend. I'm curious if you've seen anything, to lawyers who are like, I need to charge 12 hours.
I can second that. And I mean, we work with many firms that when they have vacancies now, they're not filling them, and they're increasing their revenue.
And I think what will be interesting in the long term on that note, I think, is what is the trending towards the mean when it comes to public market P&Ls. Because right now, everyone, us included, like if we generate savings here, and then we say, yeah, customer service, maybe can offer a more powerful service to more users, and because we're more scalable to more smaller customers as well in a different way than we did before, and in many other areas as well. And I think a lot of the HR teams think similar. I think the question will become when do margins compress to an extent that the expectation is that a public company G&A is now 7% instead of 12% on median and so on, and the gross margin should be 95%. And that's, I think, to be seen if the overall trend continues that all companies will kind of do that redeployment, or will that just these margins develop differently?
Well, that's exactly where my question was going. Hi, Maritza over here. Hey, I think we've talked a lot about agents today and how they're supposed to take over some of the work, but we haven't really talked about the impact on organizational design. And I'm wondering if you see redeployment of talent being a big challenge, especially maybe for you, Hanno, and if that's something that you're planning to build towards at Personio. And maybe it's something like, do you expect that to happen at the redesign of roles? Is it kind of our organizations designed based on capabilities and you just deploy the people on demand to the right projects? Or how do you imagine the organization of the future, given that agents will be driving a lot of that innovation?
So I think there's two answers to this. Answer number one is I still think organizational structures will not just be randomly redeploying people across random projects, because I think you need structure, and I think agents, whether they're virtually part of the team or just enhanced humans, will be part of that work. But the same way how also in other technical evolutions, the fact that we're now using email instead of sending letters hasn't changed that everyone now that is much more efficient using their PC than in 30 years ago is now working in a different structure. So I think the structural elements make sense, but I think, of course, the amount of people you need and the type of work they will be doing will be very different. And how that then helps, and to your second question, how will we at Personio help? We always believe that there's a lot of uniqueness. Every company is a little bit of snowflake in every industry, and based on all kinds of reasons. And so everyone will take a slightly different approach to this as for other trends in the past. So what we are helping is, when it comes to talent development, having a talent development suite where you can support your own programs and where you can support your conversations about how do you have like your career path in the company and how you can have development paths. And I think a lot of companies will use these capabilities of our software to think about, okay, well, now we have a customer service person that no longer is needed because it's automated, but we want to develop them into a success role because we can now invest more there. And I think these kind of paths will become more the norm. But again, we're supporting that in a more, I guess, platformized way rather than opinionated. This is how you should build your organization in the future, because we realized with already 15,000 customers we're having today, everyone has a different approach today and will take a different path in the future.
I think it's to jump in on that. Like, it feels we're very much in the transition where no one knows the new structure, and therefore, in customer service, you need teams, small teams, focused just on the agent, and no one has this yet. No one's established this. I imagine the same for legal teams, right? You need a small part of each of those who's focused full time on using your tool and becomes like experts in that and working there. And those people are just forming, and no one's figured out the new org structure. But I think the other thing, the macro view of the implications is also, we're still hiring more engineers. We didn't know we're going to hire more PMs for a year. I was like, I have no fucking idea how many PMs we need on the team. Like, we're now hiring more PMs, more designers, do more work. So it's like, if hire more people who can now do more work than they could do before, but we still have a ton of work we need to do. So I think the trend is it's not been obvious where it's gone to, and it hasn't seen that reorg or reshuffle yet, but I think no one knows the new state of it yet either.
Yeah, and I think on R&D side specifically, I do believe there'll be some convergence of roles, and we've had a lot of discussions internally how much we should leapfrog and opinionate it and now say, okay, for us, it's just a designer and some engineers, and a designer also does the product strategy, and or not. And so far we haven't gone that way, but I think there will be some areas where front end will start to do more design work. We can automate it more, and designers will start to contribute more to code, and these roles will merge closer for sure and are already today. The question is at what point, and again, that's different companies will have different philosophies, the same way how right now some companies the product manager runs the whole show and some companies the engineering manager, and I think that will also play into which roles will kind of become more powerful, or maybe you'll have less in the organization.
It does feel like, even in marketing, specialist roles are going away and generalists are emerging. Same as fluidity in R&D, where an engineer, hey, you can step in and PM this project. We don't need to PM. Like that fluidity thing feels pretty horizontal across things. And so I feel the decline of the specialist, the rise of a generalist feels pretty accurate of what's happening broadly now.
Hey, so I think, so thank you very much for a very interesting panel. My name is Marga. I'm co-founder of Legal Notes, also a legal tech founder. And Max, my question is mostly to you, but I'd be very interesting to hear from all of you. I've been working in this space for over 7 years. And throughout this whole time, as a former lawyer myself, I've been very interested in the billable hour challenge that you've briefly touched upon. So I just wanted to, if possible, to double click on the example you've shared about the partner saying you need to charge 12 hours for that. So what is your approach on pricing that through the Legora portal? Is it still the billable hours, or is there a different pricing mechanism?
No, it can't be the billable hour if they're spending 25 minutes doing it, or if the client is self-serving on it. I mean, the bankers figured out that you can take a percentage of the deal. Some law firms are starting to price like that. There's also alternative fee arrangements where basically, like a big corporate would go to a law firm and say, hey, we're going to pay you $20 million over the next year or next 2 years, and we want you to do like all this work. Can you do it? Right, and that's kind of a challenge in terms of, can you figure out the cheapest and most effective way to do it, because that means you get to keep more money, right? So I think there's a lot of different methods, and it will take time for this to develop.
Do you see law firms adopting the fixed pricing yet, or are they still sticking to the older models?
Oh, there's a lot of fixed pricing going on right now.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're at time. Is it?
Can I ask one more question?
You've got the mic, so yes.
Okay, I got the mic, right. Thank you again. And just a short question. I want you to dive into these generalized models and specific product issue. So as general purpose models become more capable, what will define the boundaries between their capacities and the specialized AI products? Will be the data pool, the product layer, or something entirely different? What will define it in the B2B and B2C space? If you can expand on that. I'm very curious about your thoughts on this topic.
I mean, I can start. I think it's like, look, our job is to build opinionated solutions to problems for a small, specific group of people. And like, by definition, the general AI platforms are not, right? And I think that's really what separates it. And then that takes form in how your go-to-market looks, how your platform feels, how you design it, how you talk about it, how you market it, how you implement it. It sort of, you know, takes form in all the different departments, but that's sort of really the cusp of it, I think.
I think for us, it's like performance, cost, latency are the three variables. Where can you tune something that's meaningfully better, that it's worth the effort to do this, and the maintenance cost over what the LLMs give you? We've been able to get that, those improvements there, but sometimes the latency one is really important, or those variables can adjust for whichever part of your system you're doing it. But so for us, it's not a macro decision, it's a micro per LLM call that we're doing. Can we actually do one better and get a win in one of those places that justifies the effort? So that's how we're framing it, and that's at the lower down the stack. And then I think Max talked about the value upwards from there. All right, well, we wrap there. Thanks to both for joining us here. And
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.